Hi guys, and welcome back. If we haven't met, my name is Jennifer. I am a dog trainer, and today we're going to be talking about an issue that is really common among dogs, which is canine separation anxiety. And if you're here today live, you're very lucky because we have separation anxiety expert, Malena DeMartini. Malena is a graduate of the Academy for Dog Trainers and the author of the book Treating Separation Anxiety in Dogs. And I'm very excited to have a chat with her today. So let us welcome Malena. Hi.
Hi, Jennifer. Hello, everyone that's here today. Thanks for having me.
It is certainly my pleasure. It's an honor for you to come on our show.
Thanks.
And you know that I am really excited to hear about your personal experience in working through separation anxiety with your very own dogs. I have a lot of questions about that. And of course, we're also going to be sharing lots of great advice. So anybody who's watching, if you've got questions for Malena, we can get to all of them. So throw them in the comments. And Malena, I'm sure will be very happy to speak to them.
Absolutely. I love getting people's questions. It's great.
Questions are great. But first, I thought that we might start off with something easy. Would you like to tell everybody about your business and what you do?
Sure. So, you already mentioned I'm an academy grad. I've been a dog trainer and behavior counselor for almost 21 years now. Most of that has been specializing exclusively with separation anxiety. I've authored two books on the topic, not just the one, yeah. And and the most recent one came out just last year, and it's quite. Oh, she happens to have it.
I
She
got it on
happens to
pre-order.
have. You're so fun. I love that, Jennifer. And so, insofar as, our business, we help separation anxiety clients all over the world. And there's a lot of them. You mentioned it's quite a prevalent issue. We're looking at about 50% of the dog population at this point in time that are experiencing some sort of separation related behavior problem. 50%
50%.
of 50%. And so if we're talking 50%, I won't even ask you to guess how many dogs you think that pet dogs that would be in the United States.
Millions.
44 million and above.
Oh my God.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I think the thing that's so important for everyone to know is that this is a welfare issue. These dogs are terrified and they are suffering if they are not cared for properly. So, insofar as our business, we work with all of the dogs and particularly the associated humans to help with separation anxiety. And because separation anxiety is such a unique behavior problem, we're able to do all of this using remote tools like Zoom and other online, Skype and those sorts of things. And I'm so grateful and joyful to do what I do every single day.
Yeah. I mean, we're really lucky now to have the tools that we do with the technology, right?
It was very different 20 years ago, Jennifer.
I bet. Oh my goodness. But that doesn't mean it's easy, right?
Does not. But
No.
it is easier than it was when I started, I have to admit.
Yeah. And easier still, well, for the past year, I assume, is that has it been easier for the owners that you have worked with?
Well, in an interesting way, it's been easier on some, but I think there's the potential that we're going to see epidemic proportions of separation anxiety when suddenly people start going back to their work or other social activities in their lives and haven't necessarily prepared their dog for alone time. And that is true for not just the dogs that were acquired in the last 14 months or so, but even those dogs that just have, always been able to be left alone. If they haven't been left alone throughout the entire pandemic, there may be an adjustment period. And so now, like this very moment, like do not stop. Like this very moment is the time to start preparing these dogs for alone time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So well, we'll get into that, but I have some questions. First, do you want to tell, your background is in statistics, right? Um,
It is.
and that has you've brought the skills from that background into your work with separation anxiety, which is has kind of been crucial, right? Like
Very.
we know so much. I know so much more because of what you've done and how you've collected all of this data from all of these dogs. Could you even guess like how many dogs you have collected data from over the past 20 years?
I don't think I could even guess.
Okay.
In the beginning, and it's a little sad in the beginning because we did not have the remote capability that we do now. I literally had paper files. Like, who does that? But I had paper files that I kept notes and everything on each individual dog. And one of these days I'll go through all those hundreds of cases and start entering data. But I have yet to convert all those paper files into actionable data for right now. But since we've had more robust tracking and data collection tools that are accessible online, we've been collecting so much. And we've not only been collecting a lot of data on what kinds of dogs, how long does it take, what are they experiencing, all these things. We've also been collecting data on the individual dog, and we have to remember that data drives behavior modification. And one of our huge goals is to be able to look at, say, an exponential chart or graph and see where the trend line is, how quickly the dog is progressing, what are the different variables in the dog's training that are making this process go even a little more quickly, and be a little more efficient and effective. And we track so much, and we're kind of geeks when it comes to playing with all of our graphs and charts and distilling our data down. So it's been a lot of fun. And from a behavior analysis standpoint, it really has opened the doors.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to be able to benefit from all of that, and and I'm sure all of the owners and the dogs that you work with too. Um, but so speaking of statistics, I'm just curious about demographic data. So since we do want to talk about your dogs, do you want to tell us first about who your dogs are? First, their names, of course, but ages and genders and breeds.
Yeah. So my older dog is Teeny DeMartini, and she is an absolute love of my life. Not to put any less love on my younger dog, who is named Mabel. We named her Mabel because she's got these incredibly long lashes. So we called her the Maybelline model. And so Mabel is just a little spitfire. So Teeny is 11, Mabel is 1. And Mabel is really my newest project, if you will. After 11 years with Teeny, I've gotten through any and all behavior concerns for the most part. And then you get a brand new dog, and surprise, there's all sorts of stuff to work on, including separation anxiety.
They are all so different. I mean, not just talking about separation anxiety, but every dog comes with their own quirks, right?
They're so unique. Each one is so unique to any other one. Even when you bring them from the same exact litter, they have totally different personalities and unique sets of, quirks and interests and behaviors that sometimes are can be challenging and sometimes are just fun.
Uh-huh. So let's start off with something fun. What are some of the cute, quirky, funny things that for each of them?
Well, for Teeny, she, she is very, very ball obsessed, and that doesn't sound like anything, unique, I realize, but she's only about 10 pounds. And she can outrun the biggest Great Dane or the fastest Greyhound in Labrador. That little girl, if there is a ball involved, she will take you down to get it, right? And it's amazing watching her now that she's 11. I mean, she has barely slowed down a notch,
Wow.
and is so exuberant about playing. She loves all people, and she loves most dogs, not all. She's a selective gal, and she's allowed to be at 11 years old, I think.
I think they are at any age, right? They're allowed.
They're allowed. They're allowed all of their different predilections, of course.
And did you say
Uh,
for everybody else what type of dogs? Teeny
oh,
and
sure. So Teeny, my little Teeny DeMartini, she's a long-haired Chihuahua mix from what we can gather. I think there's a little Papillon in there because she's got the full butterfly ears.
so cute.
And she's got the curled up fluffy tail and the whole nine yards. And she's all chocolate colored. Mabel, I'm waiting on our DNA test. We shall see what Mabel is. She is a terrier, believe me, like all thorough, full on terrier of some sort with the crazy wire hair. She's like a scruffalophagus all the time. And she has that terrier tenacity that we often see. She is full of herself, but it's interesting. You had asked me what is a unique characteristic about each of them.
Yeah.
It Mabel actually came. She was found as a street dog, rather sickly and emaciated at the age of about 4 months in Mexico, and someone rescued her and brought her to a wonderful organization, and they got her all back up to health and all that good stuff. And I was fairly sure that that she was going to have a lot of difficulty with strangers and things. Just a lot of fears in general, just because of her very young exposure to a particularly difficult time.
Yeah.
And she is the most bomb-proof. I mean, she loves every person. She is so not fearful in any way.
Oh, that's
But
so
of course,
amazing.
irony of all irony, she does have separation anxiety. So
Yeah. Do you find is that pretty common? Like the dogs who are super like just love humans and don't have any fear in that regard. Does that correlate with higher rates of separation anxiety, or do we not know?
we don't know. There's when we take clients, there's sometimes we go through trends, and when I literally sometimes you'll be like, I have 7 Lunas right now. I wonder if you name your dog Luna, if that's going to cause separation anxiety. I mean, silly things like that.
Yeah.
But I used to sort of confidently pronounce that separation anxiety dogs tend to have very few behavior problems outside of the separation anxiety. But now that we're global, I don't think I can confidently say that anymore. We have a lot of separation anxiety dogs that have other fears. Comorbidity between noise phobias and those sorts of fears is really quite high. And we have stranger danger and reactivity dogs and all sorts of things. So I think I was a little idealistic back in the day when I thought that these dogs just had separation anxiety and nothing else.
Yeah. Oh gosh, when I have encountered people who are starting to look into addressing separation anxiety, they think that might be it, and they also have the stranger danger and reactivity. Like that has to be the trickiest combo, I would
It
think.
is.
I mean,
It is. I will say though, one of the things, and I don't really have concrete data on this, but one of the things that we really do see is that as we address the separation anxiety, we start to see an overall reduction in the dog's general other issues. And I think, and like I said, I don't really have, concrete data on it, but I think it does make logical sense that if we can, bring down those crazy cortisol levels and adrenaline that are happening, that it would bleed out and be beneficial for other behaviors that the dog is experiencing.
That absolutely seems to make logical sense.
Seems
Like, I mean, everybody has heard of trigger stacking at this point, right? And for us humans, you would think like if one area of your life suddenly got way less stressful, like you're going to be able to handle everything else, even if it's still a problem, like you're just going to be able to handle it better. You're going to bring a better version of yourself to it. That's how my brain kind of would think
That's
about
how my
that.
brain works too.
Okay.
So I think we're in agreement there. One of these days we'll have some more concrete data on it, but for now, I think it's a pretty good working assumption.
Yeah, and that's cool. That's good news, right? If that's what you see.
It
um,
is.
cool. So, and I don't know that I actually directly asked the question, but do you see other trends among certain breeds or genders? Has there been enough data yet to answer that question?
The jury is definitely out on that. My personal opinion, and I'll tell you a funny story to back it up, is that separation anxiety is pretty indiscriminate. It's an equal opportunity for every dog to have separation anxiety. And there's been some fantastic data and research done recently on the genetic components and that are supporting separation anxiety. And there's epigenetics involved. There's certain genetic markers like haplotypes involved. It's fascinating stuff. But I mean, we just don't see that there are these like specific breeds that are definitely, all going to have or very likely be prone to separation anxiety. But the funny story that I do have about that, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and 20 years ago, or maybe a little less, people would ask that question, do you see breed specifications? And I always, and this is, you would think as a statistician I would know better, but I didn't. Um, and I would always say, I'm not sure why, but there are so many pit bulls that are my clients. I have so many separation anxiety pit bulls. And people were like, really? Oh, that's interesting. Pit bulls have a propensity towards separation anxiety, huh? Then, when we got online tools and I started taking clients all over the US and then ultimately clients all over the world, I realized, oh, well, all of my clients or a lot of my clients were pit bulls because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area and there are a lot of pit bulls here. There's quite a dense population of pit bulls. And so as I started to grow and move around, to clients all over the world, we would see that, for instance, right now in the UK, everybody keeps telling me that all the cockapoos have separation anxiety, but cockapoos are the number one breed right now in the UK. So just the percentage that they represent means that they will have a higher prevalence in people's caseloads.
That makes a lot of sense. And if that's good, I think, for people to hear, because if you heard, oh yeah, that might cause a lot of people, well, I'm not getting a cockapoo because I can't.
That's right.
But yeah, numbers, they can tell us so much.
Can they can.
So both of your dogs have separation anxiety.
Yes.
And I actually don't know the answer to this question. Did you get both of your guys as puppies?
So I got Teeny as a puppy, and um, it was interesting story. She was rescued by this woman, and within 24 hours, the woman found out that she was deathly allergic to dogs. Like literally, she had to get rushed to the hospital and get like a injection of whatever it is that they inject you with because her throat was closing up and all this stuff.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so she needed someone to take the dog off her hands. And it was just serendipitous that I was looking for exactly that Teeny DeMartini dog that she is. But she was about 9 weeks old, and from day one, she was like the stars, the moon, the sun, They all revolve around you, mommy. And I couldn't believe how profound it was within just 24 hours that she was very, very anxious about me not being present, even when my husband was home. And so, yeah, we did get her as a puppy, and unfortunately, we worked through her separation anxiety, and she has been very successful with being left alone for many, many years now. Then again, fast forward to just last year when we adopted Mabel, and Mabel was about 6 or 7 months, about 7 months when we adopted her, and she obviously, because I'm so lucky with acquiring these separation anxiety dogs, not like I'm seeking that out, but they find me. So and when if Mabel starts to get upset from a for whether that's alone time related or anything else, Teeny will have some sort of contagion and she'll start to get upset too. So
Mm.
now I'm working with my dual anxiety household, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, just kind of goes to show you like any big life change, right, can affect how they do.
Absolutely, it
She
can.
you said years Teeny had been okay. And okay, does that mean did you have a limit on how long you could leave her?
My personal bias is that I don't typically leave dogs for longer than 4, maybe 5 hours on the outside. That has just always been my bias.
Hmm.
If I'm getting gone for more than 4 hours, I'm always going to have someone come and sit with the dogs. But we were fine for 4 hours, and she was perfectly fine. It was interesting, and I love to tell people this. Um, she was fine with being alone. However, I would always, well, yeah, ooh, big secret here. I would always watch and compare her, what I consider baseline. So when I'm home watching Netflix and eating popcorn, what does she look like? What is her body language like in when we're hanging out together? And then I would always compare that to what kind of behavior she displayed when left alone. And while I would say she was very successful with alone time, she never, ever has gotten to the point where she is equally as chilled out when alone as she is when we're home. And I want people to understand that and know that it's okay as long as they aren't experiencing distress. That dogs may be in a situation where they're like, this is not as fun as when my mom is home or my dad is home, right? So they may have an element of, I mean, they're very social creatures. So they may have an element of like, hmm, this is no fun. I don't really like it as much. I'm going to look out the window sometimes. And, sometimes I'll like curl up in a ball and then I'll lift my head back up like, oh, when are they coming home? But she really was fine. But I never, ever, ever saw her get to the point of such relaxation that she is when we are home.
So just I think to give people an idea of what that means. I mean, you talked about looking out the window and curling up in a ball, but can you describe a little bit like what the relaxation body language was compared to what you see that's not, it's like disappointed, but I'm not anxious.
That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. For instance, if I'm home, I mean, she will be either sprawled out on her bed or curled up in a tight little ball. And she sleeps very, very soundly. She always has. When we're gone, there's a lot of up and down. There's sort of like, I'm going to look out the window, then I'm going to go lie on the couch, then I'm going to lift my head again. And then I'll curl up in a ball for a moment, but then I don't feel comfortable there. So I'm going to go onto another bed and then I'll look out the window again. And then, and she's truly not anxious. And, the kind of, I mean, when I first got her and when we started working through anxiety, she was screaming at the top of her lungs when I would just start to go out the door for 1 millisecond. And she was doing all the things, the destruction and even the urination and defecation and all that stuff when we first got her.
Oh, yeah, all
And
the things.
so It's yeah, all she had the three-headed dog going on there, right? Um,
And that was from day
and
one, you said?
that was from day one.
Okay.
Day one.
Wow.
And so when I look at, when I see her body language now or have seen it for the last many years, I'm like, oh, she is so not that anxious dog anymore. Um, but I think you're right. Disappointment is a good word, where they're like, I really wish mom and dad were home, but I guess I'll just sort of, tolerate this successfully. And, when we get home, she's obviously very excited, but I can tell that she has not been experiencing distress. There are dogs that when you arrive home, their over exuberance spills over for 10, 20, 30 minutes where they're like, thank God you're home. And she's sort of like, yay, you're home. So should we go play ball? Should we have a meal? What should we do? Like she's fine, and that's so seeing the during and even observing the after is I think useful.
Yeah, yeah. So compared to how I want to make sure we do let everybody know. You said Teeny had the big three, right? The urination, defecation, the vocalization, and destroying things in the house. But not every dog has to be doing all of those
No,
to be diagnosed with separation anxiety, right?
that's exactly right. And it's important for people to know that. Those are the three most commonly reported symptoms. And it depends on which research that you look at as to whether they say, well, vocalization is the highest reported versus distraction versus elimination. In my experience, vocalization is one of the most commonly reported symptoms, but they don't even have to vocalize in order to be experiencing separation related issues. They can they're so, drooling, pacing, panting, scratching at doors or scratching at windows, inappropriate chewing at particularly at points of exit. There's so many different things, and some dogs truly. Was a study several years ago that showed some dogs that would, for all intents and purposes, not look particularly distressed, but when they zoned in on the dogs and they took cortisol tests and stuff like that, they were showing like massive pupillary dilation and lots of, subtle salivation and things like that. So you may not see these huge outward bursts, but they can still be, they can still be suffering.
So I would love to I have a lot of questions about the diagnosis aspect, but first I want to know, like, compared to how Teeny displayed these symptoms first, how about Mabel?
So Mabel is 100% vocalization only.
Okay.
And but it is the saddest and most forlorn howling that you could ever imagine. And she's quite small. We got her at 7 months, and surprisingly she grew because she was young. So I always think of her as tiny, but she is also about 10 or 11 pounds. Um, but she's got the highest pitch vocalization. She sounds like a bird, really. And when she howls, it is just devastating to
Ugh.
listen to. It is. And, not that I leave her alone at this point in time, but in the very beginning, we weren't quite sure, and we were doing some tests and assessments, and we would hear that first little, squeaky forlorn howl, and we were like, okay, forget it. She's not going to be able to do this. We got to start with the training. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so sad. So coming back to the diagnosis aspect, if a dog isn't displaying those big outward signs, how would somebody know to look into this?
I mentioned that we now know that about somewhere in the 50% neighborhood of dogs are suffering. There's a great study, and the name escapes me right now, but that researched the likelihood of that number being incredibly underestimated
The
because
even 50% number?
Even the 50% number,
Gosh.
because the majority of dogs that are not having outward manifestation, if the neighbors aren't complaining, there's no destructive behavior to, get the owner to come home and be upset about, and there's no elimination on the carpet, which also gets the owner upset. Most people will not know if their dog is suffering.
Mhm. If
I
it's not a
remember a
problem for
very,
me.
what's that?
If it's not a problem for me.
Not a problem for me, right? And I don't, I think that when you come home, if you haven't had noise complaints and there's no destruction or elimination, why would your brain go toward, my dog is suffering or whatever. I think that the numbers are starting to catch up because everybody has access to a camera now.
Mhm.
I think years ago, and it wasn't all that long ago, that we were estimating somewhere between 15 and 17% of dogs suffering from this. And that has only shot up in the last several years. And I think the advent of technology has made that change.
Oh, good for dogs.
I know, I agree.
So assume you're just hearing this for the first time. You haven't had these big problems, uh, and you wanted like who can diagnose whether your dog has separation anxiety or not?
So diagnostics need to be done by a veterinarian. This is considered a clinical behavior, and so the first place that people should start is by talking to a professional, including their veterinarian. But I definitely recommend that people don't just stop there, because one of the things that is amazing about having veterinary input is that they can help so much in so many different ways, whether that does or does not include medication or alternative remedies. But the day-to-day sort of work and training, and the day-to-day, what should I do to help train my dog today? A vet won't have time to work one-on-one that way. And so having sort of a little village of professionals and even non-professionals, friends and neighbors and family that can help watch the dog when you have to run to the grocery store and things like that. Sort of having that village for the dog is just the place to begin. But yeah, the clinical diagnosis must be done by a vet or a veterinary behaviorist. And we can certainly assess and provide information to the vets and veterinary behaviorists um, through observation and reporting on, very observable and measurable behaviors that we see.
Yeah, yeah. And so well, gosh, had you had a dog with separation anxiety before, Teeny?
Well, no, I say no, but I looked back to when I was like 6 years old,
Oh.
and we had a dog. We were never, my mom or someone was always home, but whenever we were gone, the dog would escape the yard and go running through the neighborhood. But he was never, we had no idea. And whenever someone would, everybody knew our dog because he would escape the yard every time we would leave. And when they would bring him back, he would be covered in saliva. And so, retrospectively, I suspect that dog was very, very uncomfortable about alone time. And he would go out the dog door and break out of the yard. And we had reinforced the fence 100 times, but he would find a way. And so, retrospectively, I think we did, but we didn't know any better back then.
Got it, got it. Um, but having, I gosh, when you got Teeny, then you had already been working with this issue for at least 10 years, is it?
For about 10 years already.
So what prompted you to get into this specific behavior issue? I feel like a lot of trainers I hear it's because they'd already been training and found a special interest in it, or they had a dog with separation anxiety. So
Yeah.
was it one of those or something different for you?
No, it was neither, believe it or not. And I tell people, I think separation anxiety chose me. I did not choose it, right? So, I was a very green graduate from the Academy for Dog Trainers, and we'd learned some about separation anxiety, and As new trainers, we were like, ooh, that's the last thing I want to work with, right? And that's complicated and everything. But the very first client that contacted me had a dog with separation anxiety, and I'll never forget this dog. His name was Guinness. He was a bearded collie, and the people were so lovely. So, and this was back in the day, talk about retro, when people would just call you on the phone and say, hi, my name is such and such, and I have a dog behavior that I need some help with. And so I just answered the phone and we started talking. And she said, my dog has separation anxiety. And I said, oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I know that you must be very worried. I'm a very new trainer. I don't think it's appropriate for me to take on a complicated case like this. So I'd like to refer you to a couple of my colleagues. The woman burst into tears on the phone. I mean, like hiccupy type of crying, right? And she said, you are the 7th trainer that I've been referred to that has told me that they won't work with separation anxiety. She said, so please, if you're going to refer me to a couple of your colleagues, please refer me to someone that will work with separation anxiety. And my heart sank because I knew that the 2 or 3 trainers that I was going to refer her to would give the same sort of answer. Like, I don't do separation anxiety type of thing, right? And I'm hearing her cry, and I said, okay, here's the thing. I want to be fully transparent. I'm a very green trainer. I I know the principles, I know the basics, but but that's all I know. But I hear you, and I'm so impressed that you're continuing to move forward and try to find help. So many people would have just relinquished the dog at that point. And she's like, no, I want to have help. And I said, okay, as long as you understand, I will not get in over my head. We'll call in other people, etc. And so I worked with her, and it was kind of funny because we were very successful. The dog was able to be left alone. But retrospectively, I think that dog probably would have gotten over it in time. He was a very new dog to the household, and I think, I don't know that it was really full-blown separation anxiety or if it was just a dog that was totally not acclimated to their home yet. But quick, boy, that news spread like wildfire. Oh, Malena will take on separation anxiety. She knows what she's doing. And from that point forward, and that was my very first case, from that point forward, all of the trainers in the San Francisco Bay Area were like, I don't want to take it. Send it to Malena. Send it to Malena. And one of the interesting things about that story is that I thought for a while I was kind of full of myself, like, oh, I got this separation anxiety dog to be okay. But I got my second separation anxiety case and did exactly what I did with Guinness. And this dog's name was Orville, and crashed and burned. We could not make progress to save our soul. And it was when I was working with Orville that I thought, I have a big responsibility, a really big responsibility. If people are going to start referring these cases to me, number one, I have to be completely transparent with everybody I speak to and say, I don't know the answer. I'll help you. We'll work on it together. We'll go through a trial and error process, but I don't know the answer. So that was number one. But number two, I thought, somebody, because everybody is so afraid of separation anxiety, somebody better get in there and start figuring out what works. And that's what I did for probably about 8 or 9 years, was just work with separation anxiety dogs and figure out, well, okay, maybe that's not the best direction. Oh, this is more efficient. Oh, this is less efficient. Oh, this is more effective. Oh, this one's not. And so it was a long journey of learning for me.
I love that story. I've never heard you tell that story before, but I had goosebumps. I'm like, oh, Guinness. Oh, how cool is that?
In our training with Guinness back then, I was using a confinement area with him, and we would say, Guinness, go to the pub. And Guinness would run into his little pub confinement area, and I will never forget that dog.
Oh my God, that is so cute. I love like making unique cues for dogs.
I do
Everybody
too.
thinks it has to be go lie down and sit and down and
Yeah, exactly.
make it whatever you want. Oh.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really cute. So talking about the symptoms, we talked a little bit about how separation anxiety showed up on Teeny and Mabel, and how it can kind of look different on
Very
every
much.
dog. Um, and I know that you personally consider every case of separation anxiety to be severe. People like to talk about severity. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because it's amazing. Every single client that contacts us say, my dog has the most severe separation anxiety you've ever seen. And they're not wrong because in their eyes, it is extreme. But severity on a scale of, oh, dogs that only whine versus dogs that howl versus dogs that destroy versus dogs that jump out windows, it's easy for us to try and categorize the severity level, but we have to remember something super important about this. Anxiety is debilitating, okay? And the outward manifestation is not always equal to the internal struggle that is occurring. And the example that I often give people is we'll take three people and all three are afraid of spiders. And the first person cries and cries and cries and cries when they see the spider, and maybe they walk out of the room and close the door and hide in their, bedroom until someone can come and remove the spider. The second person screams bloody murder, right? And runs around making all sorts of noise, scream, 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 scream. And the last person, who's also afraid of spiders, picks up the nearest objects and starts hurling them at the spider, right? And so if we look at all three of those people and I ask the question, who do you think is the most afraid of spiders? We don't have an answer to that question. Just because one may appear louder or display in a different way doesn't mean that their internal fear and terror is any less important or valuable. There's no scale with which we can say, remember you go to the doctor and they're like, are you a 1 or a 10, on the pain scale? We can't ask our dogs that, and we can't even ask humans try and make
I don't
my
even
fear
I don't
my
even
fear
know how to
more than
answer those
yours.
questions myself.
I
I'm like,
know.
compared to what?
Compared to what? That's exactly right. So I don't like to try and label, and we as human beings, we love labeling, right? We label maple syrup, we label USDA meat, we give grades A, B, C, D, we love to label things and categorize things, but I really try to not categorize it anyway because every single case is a dog that is scared. And that to me is a welfare issue.
Yeah. Do you know I think what a beautiful illustration of that, the spider example that you gave is, those videos, like prank videos where people are like hiding dressed up as a spider in an elevator or something. And you get these really nice compilations and you can see like right in a row all the different ways that people react to the same fear. And it's
So
so cool. Like I think it's such an awesome example.
it really is. I love that example. I've never thought of that before.
Yeah. So with your own dogs, and having had the experience, the 10 years of experience at least for Teeny, when your dogs first came to you, you didn't know that they might have this issue before they came home, right?
No, I did
Okay.
not.
So they came home and you were looking for it probably already. Like I need to know because I need to know how to move forward, right?
To be fair, I was so naive. I was like, yeah, my dogs aren't going to have separation anxiety. And then when with Teeny, as a matter of fact, the very first time I left her for any appreciable amount of time, I literally went down to the corner store to grab whatever. And I came back and my neighbor said, your dog screamed for the last 15 minutes. And I opened the door and there's stuff everywhere and
Oh.
pee and poop. And I was like, I was gone for 50. I mean, which is really dumb. I mean, you'd think specializing in separation anxiety, I would have been looking for the signs, but no. And it caught me off guard. It did not catch me off guard with Mabel. I saw it immediately and I knew what was going on, but it did catch me off guard with Teeny. And one of the things that I tell people about that experience, the moment I figured out that she was suffering from separation anxiety, I called every single and emailed and whatever, every single one of my trainer colleagues. And I said, what am I going to do? And they were, every single one, bar none, were like, aren't you the specialist? Don't you the expert in this topic? Didn't you, I hadn't written the first book yet. I don't think, no, I hadn't. But, everyone was just shocked that I was seeking out help, but it is very different to train your own dog versus having sort of a clinical removed point of view when you work with another person's dog. And the emotional roller coaster that was involved was unbelievable. And I think I'm really lucky because it gave me, I mean, I was already incredibly empathetic with dog owners that had separation anxiety dogs, but man, did it give me a new level of empathy for people.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's what I was wondering. I'm like, is it different, like having all this knowledge, or is it just as like, and one of the hardest things I think that people encounter is being needing to slow down and work at the dog's pace.
Yes.
Is that hard, just as hard being the owner of the dogs? Or do you find that any easier?
I think if there's any aspect of working with separation anxiety that is a little easier, having done it for 10 years at that point in time, I knew I'd had so much experience and even data that represented when you go too fast, you actually backfire the protocol, right? And so there's my kids saying hello in the background. I don't know if you can hear them, but they're going to start barking. I can tell. Uh, but they, all the cases that I had worked with, I realized every time someone pushed too far, too fast, we hit a wall or we hit even a regression and we had to go backwards and start from, an earlier stage. And that is not efficient or effective insofar as moving forward. So I think it was a little easier for me to,
I hear him.
do you hear them? Oh, the neighborhood cat comes and sits on my deck sometimes, and they're not happy about it. So my apologies for the barking in the background. But yeah, I think that aspect was easier. But the emotional portion, I don't think was any easier at all. The worry, the stress, the lack of understanding why is she not able to be left alone, and I think
from
everybody goes through that.
from your like social circle, that lack of understanding.
Oh, my own personal lack of understanding, like,
Oh.
why is she this way? I got her as a 9-week-old puppy and she, just you one of the interesting things, I think this is true of all behavior in dogs, not just separation anxiety. We are so focused as human beings to want to know why the dog is behaving that way. And the why is actually virtually irrelevant, if not entirely irrelevant, to how we modify the behavior. But we're so compelled as human beings to want to know the why.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember I had a math teacher in middle school who got so frustrated with me because I was always like, but why? 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 It's math, girl. I don't know.
I don't know. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, so I get that. Does it hurt just as much, or is it just as hard if you do have a setback, or have you had setbacks? Is that
I didn't really have setbacks much with Teeny. I was in a really unique situation because I was already working remotely. And to the best of my ability, I made it a very sort of clinical endeavor. And I was like, she is never, ever, ever, ever going to get pushed. I don't care if there's someone that needs me to run down the corner for 5 minutes. If we're not at 5 minutes yet, I'm not going to do it, So I was very strict. And we really didn't go through many, dips and lows. Um,
That's good.
but I would say that is not the norm. I think almost all, even when you're super, super sterile about your protocol, most dogs do a little bit of up and then they plateau, and then there's sometimes a regression, and then they're back up a little higher, and then there's a little, another little dip. And that's just, behavior is never linear, never. And so we have to expect that. And it is, I think, one of the biggest jobs that we have as separation anxiety trainers is to help people get through that emotion and that roller coaster of, but I thought he was getting better. Oh, he is.
What did I do?
Even though today he didn't do as well as he did yesterday, he's still getting better. We have to really cheerlead people and coach people and counsel people, and it's a huge part of what we do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So with Teeny and Mabel, do you remember with Teeny like what duration you started at?
With Teeny, it was interesting because, well, and actually Mabel has been somewhat the same. I was able to start with walking out the door and counting to a couple of seconds, because both of them, or I should say neither of them, had any they didn't know that, keys and shoes meant that I was going to leave. They didn't know that when I walked out the door, it was going to be an interminable amount. So I was really able to start with small durations, but didn't have to get too complicated down the line with introducing pre-departure cues and things, which with many dogs, after we build up some duration and we start to incorporate pre-departure cues, we'll see a dip, because those have been predictors for a long time and triggers for a long time. And so I think I lucked out with both of them, that I haven't had to, get as complicated as some of the cases really are. So I was able to start with a few seconds on both of them. Yeah.
Which really speaks to like how addressing it earlier can do you a lot of favors. Right?
It really can. It really can.
No. Okay. So, and we know that Teeny's been good for the most part for years. And where's Mabel at? Are you addressing the separation anxiety exactly the same as you would with a client?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But, well, it's kind of a maybe, sort of a yes and no. I'm doing the training exactly as I would with the client. But with my clients, I ask them to devote about 20 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And I'm not devoting 20 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week. I'm an admittedly lazy trainer. My husband and I have rearranged our schedules such that the girls are never, ever, ever left alone. And it's only when I happen to have time between meetings or whatever that I will that I will implement the training. Mabel's already up to about 15 minutes. And that's actually fairly quick, considering I'm not training like consistently 5 days a week. So she's doing okay.
Yeah. Oh, good. I just had that you said something that made me think of a question I've been meaning to ask, and now I'm totally blanking. Oh, about management. I mean, you said that the girls are never left alone, and we of course know that that's kind of the first and most crucial piece, right?
Absolutely.
So part of the job of trainers helping people work through this is helping them come up with solutions and ways to make that possible, right? So what strategies do you rely on the most? I mean, may not need too much right now, since most of us are, at least up until very recently, have been spending most of our time at home anyway.
That's right.
But yeah,
Although it has been different in the pandemic, because we there's a lot of people that are like, I won't have people into my home. I won't
That's
have a
true.
pet sitter come over. I won't, bring my dog to the neighbor's house and hang out with the neighbor for 5 minutes before I leave because of the, risk of contagion. And so there have been certain challenges with the pandemic too, but pre-pandemic and hopefully again post-pandemic, I always tell people that we're only limited by our creativity. People, when we talk to people, when clients reach out to us and they're like, never leave my dog alone for longer than he can handle. Whoa.
And if that's
And
not
they're
even two
like,
seconds.
and that might not even be 2 seconds, right? But we quickly talk them off of that ledge and remind them that, number one, this is temporary. Okay. This is not for the next 15 years of your dog's life. This is for the next however many weeks or months that we're going to be working on this problem. Um, and number two, we remind them that the more creativity that they can devote, it doesn't have to be, well, gosh, my dog doesn't like daycare, so I guess I'm out of luck. Like that is one of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and probably the least used out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of solutions. Um, and we have people, we start with our immediate network, but now that we've got social media, things like Nextdoor, people can make great connections with neighbors in their community and do dog swaps. Hey, your dog can come over and play with my dog on Thursday, and can my dog go over and play with your dog on Friday? And, that kind of stuff. And I mean, we've got so many options from, the closest friends and family all the way to, going through the church bulletin and finding people that are looking for part-time work. There are so many people that would be happy to snuggle a dog
Yeah.
for, extra gas money or whatever. I mean, it's not even like a really high paid gig, but I mean, the college students that would love to raid your refrigerator and have free Wi-Fi and a quiet place to study. Awesome, right?
That is awesome. What's your favorite, like the most unusual solution to that problem that you've ever heard in your 20 plus years?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's unusual, but it made me really excited to think about how many opportunities there were out there. We had a client in South Carolina that had just moved there, didn't know anybody, no friends, no family, no colleagues for work, nothing. And the CSAT that was working with her, they developed a lovely flyer with the picture of the cute picture of the puppy dog eyes, the whole 9 yards, and then explained on the flyer that this what separation anxiety was and that they needed help. And they distributed the flyer to the drivers for Meals on Wheels. And the drivers dropped the flyers off with everybody's delivery. And not only did they get some people that were interested, they got so many people they had to start an online calendar so that people could choose and pick and schedule, because everybody wanted to have a couple of hours to watch a dog for this person. So I love that example because it just reminds me of how, yeah, we are limited only by our creativity. And if we do reach out and find those people, there are so many people that want to help, and we just need to find those people.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, I'm being aware of your time. I know that you've got another appointment here shortly, but I just want to ask final question. Is there a question that I haven't asked that I should have?
Oh, oh, oh gosh. All right. I think it's not even necessarily a question, but it never really came up. If there's so many messages that I want to get out there about separation anxiety, but one of the biggest ones I think is that it is not your fault. So many of the people that we talk to are in tears and are riddled with guilt that they think that they have caused their dog's separation anxiety. And we know a lot about separation anxiety, but one thing we don't know is the exact cause. But we do know a lot about what doesn't cause it. And spoiling type behaviors, for instance, letting the dog sleep in the bed or giving them lots of goody treats or letting them up on the couch and snuggle with you or taking them on errands, none of those things correlate and certainly are not are causational for separation anxiety. So if anything that people could know and understand, it's that they did not cause this. And so absolve yourself of any and all guilt, because the way to move forward is to say, this is the issue that I'm dealing with today. And how am I going to help my dog to no longer be terrified when left alone? Because the dog is not giving you a hard time. The dog is having a hard time, and we need to help that dog not to be so terrified and afraid.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad I asked because you're right, that message needs to be included anytime we're talking about separation anxiety, because people do take on that guilt, don't they?
They really do. They really do.
Oh, well, okay. So I'm gonna let you go here. I would love to have you back anytime because I'm sure there's so much more that to talk about when it
I
comes
would
to
love
separation
to.
anxiety.
You're so much fun to talk to, Jennifer, and we
Thank
could
you.
talk about separation anxiety stuff all day.
Cool. All right. Well, a huge thank you to you. You've been absolutely wonderful. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. Vice versa.
Just to wrap up, I want to, if you want to say where people can find you, I do have links to your site and social media in the description for anybody who wants to check that out, but just so that they hear it as well, you can let them know.
Great. Yeah. Feel free to find us, ask us questions, etc. My website is MalenaDeMartini.com. I'm also on Instagram at MalenaDeMartini.com. People DM me there all the time. I have a really active, great Facebook group called Treating Separation Anxiety in Dogs, and we post a lot of resources and information there. And then lastly, for anybody that's struggling, we have a very reasonably priced online self-paced course for dog owners that are struggling with their dog's separation anxiety. I go in there every day and answer everybody's posts and questions and comments and pictures and everything else. So people are not alone. It's a very engaged and active place to be. So that can be found on my website. It's called Mission Possible.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again so much, Malena. Hope you have a wonderful day. We'll be in touch soon.
We definitely will. We have to do it again. This is fun.
Fabulous. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, check out the links in the description, and you all have a wonderful day too. Say bye.